We tend to have an expectation about public service media that comes from the idea of what role media might play in the liberal democracy, that involves the media being something that provides information about all sorts of things that are happening in order for the public to make up their mind and participate in decision making. And then also we have an idea about serving culturally and promoting cultural values and even educating children. So as one of the oldest public service media, the BBC's educate and inform and entertain mission is one that is kind of repeated in the ideas about what we think public service media should be doing. The public service media can't play that role if nobody's actually participating on the other side. So in order for public service media to actually be fulfilling its function, people have to be listening, watching, reading, and also participating in shaping what that public service remit, what its purposes are, and also participating in holding it accountable for fulfilling that role. Yeah, it's very, very far on many cases from that ideal picture, and there's many serious challenges. And the first serious challenge that many of the Balkan countries face is that there is not a will on the part of the political elites to keep their hands off. There are perpetual problems in many countries in this region with political elites trying to influence, trying to put their people in power, trying to somehow control the content, and trying to keep their fingers in, for various reasons, these public service media. So that's the biggest challenge in terms of fulfilling this ideal image of what public service media could be. Then there's also the other challenge of more technical things, having enough money, having equipment, capacity of the staff, etc. And then there's this other kind of external challenge, which is the competition aspect, because many of the countries in the Western Balkans liberalized very rapidly. Basically, except for Croatia, we had this period after the end of Yugoslavia where licenses were given out almost like candy. That's an exaggeration, of course, but we have situations where countries that are 2 million, 3 million, 5 million people have 197 broadcasters. It's really not probably a viable situation in terms of having enough of a critical mass in any one media in order to actually create quality content and produce things at a high level, and it creates a lot of competition for the public service media. So in some countries we've seen the death of the local public service media. They've been eliminated. We have in some places national level public service media that are really struggling to maintain any kind of audience share or participate in the process, whereas in other places they're still quite strong. But overall, there's also approximately 15 to 25% of the share of audiences is going to foreign channels anyway. So the more competition you have, particularly from outside for the public service media, the less you have the public service media able to play that role as the public space in which discussions take place. And this is a challenge that's not just for the Western Balkans. I mean, with globalization and the changes in technology, the competition is there all over the place, and maybe even worse in some Western countries. So this is just part of the way we need to be thinking of these challenges as things that might reshape how we think the role of the public service media should be. There are ways to think outside the box in some ways, and existing institutions that have been created don't always need to survive at all costs. And sometimes there needs to be a rethink about what actually is the best way to provide a public service media. And in some cases, the license fee isn't the best solution for financing it. And it's very hard to provide quality programs without any money, right? So if you need to initially gain that trust, initially gain that audience, initially provide the forum in which they all feel represented, sometimes there needs to be a different funding model, and sometimes there maybe needs to be reorganization of the institutions. I think Bosnia is a unique situation here. You know, in Macedonia, we have one public broadcaster that has all programs in Albanian language, has Macedonian channel, has also a program in Turkish. It produces in 7 different languages that are all constitutionally recognized in the country. But it is one place that has one board and has one place where the license fee goes, and the things are just so. It isn't quite the same situation as you have in Bosnia, where you have these 3 different entities that are functioning entirely separately, essentially. So I think you have quite a challenge here in order to, I would say, rethink the system, but even to go to the population and find out what actually they would need in terms of public service media. Like, if you can get people to say, okay, forget what we have now, that's not, what is it that would serve your needs? And not just as individuals, but as we were discussing today, as a public. So maybe there needs to be a wider discussion about what actually would be needed.